More than 25 centuries ago, on the land of ancient India, a prince left behind his throne, his palace, and all glory and power to set out in search of the ultimate truth. That prince was Siddhartha Gautama, the one later revered by the world as the Buddha Shakyamuni. After many years of ascetic practices in the deep forest without finding liberation, he decided to stop. He sat beneath a Bodhi tree by the river Nirvana and made a vow, even if this body decays, even if my flesh and bones are broken, I shall not rise from this place until I find the path that leads all beings out of suffering. That night, under a sky full of stars, his mind became still in a way it had never been before. He began to contemplate deeply into the nature of existence. And then, a truth gradually revealed itself, the truth of dependent origination, that he saw that nothing exists on its own. Everything relies upon conditions, interwoven like the strands of a net. A green leaf exists because of the soil, the water, and the sunlight. A drop of rain exists because of clouds, wind, and vapor rising from the ocean. Even the human body is not truly one's own, it is the union of rice and grains, of parents, of the environment, of countless beings that in his awakening, he proclaimed, when this is, that is. When this arises, that arises. When this ceases, that ceases. This is the principle of dependent origination, the foundation of the entire teaching of the Buddha. To make it easier to understand, imagine a simple chain of events: clouds gather, rain falls, the road becomes slippery, someone falls, the person falls, they are injured and taken to the hospital, the injured person in the hospital requires doctors and nurses to heal them, and their family to take care of them. A small event, clouds coming together, can set off a series of consequences. Everything follows from conditions, nothing is independent. If there were no clouds, there would be no rain. If the road were not slippery, no one would fall. If no one fell, the doctors would not need to treat them. This is dependent origination, everything is connected like an invisible web. That is dependent origination, everything is connected like an invisible web. What is remarkable is that before the Buddha, no one had ever looked at the world in this way. The ancient Indians believed that the universe was created by Brahma. Others believed in a first cause, an almighty creator, but the Buddha did not accept this. He saw that if there were a creator, why would human beings still suffer? If everything were predetermined by a god, what meaning would human effort have? He affirmed, this universe has no absolute beginning, nor is it made by a divine hand. All things and phenomena arise through causes and conditions. This was a great revolution of thought, not only in religion but also in the philosophy of humankind. By seeing clearly the principle of dependent origination, the Buddha also saw the cycle of human suffering, birth, aging, sickness, and death, all arising from ignorance and craving. He also saw the path to the end of suffering, by cutting off ignorance and letting go of attachment. When dawn rose and the first rays of sunlight touched the Bodhi tree, it was also the moment when the light of wisdom shone brilliantly in his heart. Siddhartha was no longer a prince searching for the way. He had become the enlightened one. The Buddha. The story of enlightenment is not just a historical event. It is a reminder for us: suffering does not come from any external force, but from human ignorance and craving. Liberation does not come from prayer, but from wisdom that sees the interconnection of all phenomena, and dependent origination is the key that unlocks that wisdom. When people hear the term dependent origination, many think it is an abstract philosophy found only in scriptures. But in truth, dependent origination exists in every moment of daily life. It is so close that we can see it right away, if we are willing to look carefully. Take a cup of hot tea. Do you see only water and tea leaves in it? Not at all. There is a cloud in the tea, for without rain, how would there be water to brew it? There is sunlight, for without the sun, the tea plant could not grow. There is fertile soil, where the tea plant rooted itself and drew nourishment. There is the farmer who carefully harvested the leaves, the worker who processed them, the hand of the person who served the tea to you. A small cup of tea, yet it contains the entire universe. When you sip it, you are drinking the clouds, the earth, the sunlight, and human kindness. That is dependent origination, the endless interconnection within even the smallest things. Now imagine a sudden rainfall. The road becomes slippery. A person in a hurry passes by and slips. That person must be hospitalized, doctors arrive to treat them, family worries, friends come to visit. One small event, rain falling, led to a long chain of events that if there were no rain, the road would not be slippery. If the road were not slippery, the person would not have fallen. If the person had not fallen, doctors would not need to treat them. Each link, each condition arises in succession, inseparable. This is living evidence of the principle the Buddha realized: when this is, that is. When this arises, that arises. When this ceases, that ceases. When this is not, that is not. What is wonderful is that modern science is gradually touching the truth the Buddha saw more than 2,500 years ago. In the 20th century, Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen proposed a thought experiment about quantum entanglement. Later, in the 1980s, physicist Alain Aspect carried out a real experiment. The results were astonishing: two photons, even when separated by millions of kilometers, still remained connected and reacted simultaneously, beyond the limits of space and time. This is like a scientific way of describing the principle of dependent origination, that all phenomena are connected and cannot be absolutely separated. If we look back at ourselves, we can see our body is made of rice, vegetables, fish, and meat. That rice came from farmers planting, from rain and sunshine, from the earth itself. Even the breath we inhale does not belong to us alone, it is a gift from trees and the ocean. Human beings cannot exist in isolation. We rely on the earth, the sky, the community, countless factors. Seeing this, we realize we are not lonely individuals, but part of the infinite web of life. When we see dependent origination in everyday life, we learn three important things. 1. To live with gratitude, for we see that we are inheriting the efforts and love of countless beings. 2. To live with letting go, for we understand that nothing truly belongs to me, everything arises from conditions. 3. To live in harmony, for we understand that we and others are not truly separate, our happiness is tied to the happiness of others. Dependent origination is not found only in distant scriptures. It is present in a cup of tea, in the rain, in every single breath. When we realize this, life no longer feels dull or burdensome. Every moment becomes an opportunity to contemplate the wondrous interconnection of all phenomena, to live more fully, more deeply. You may be surprised to learn that what the Buddha discovered more than 25 centuries ago is now being gradually approached by modern science. With microscopes, telescopes, and giant particle accelerators, science is uncovering truths that the Buddha saw through wisdom in the stillness of meditation. Albert Einstein, the genius scientist, once said a famous line: if there is any religion that could cope with modern scientific needs, it would be Buddhism. Why did Einstein say this? In 1935, Einstein, together with two colleagues, Podolsky and Rosen, proposed a thought experiment later known as the EPR paradox. The experiment was meant to show that quantum mechanics, the rapidly developing science of that time, was incomplete. Einstein did not believe that particles could be instantly connected beyond the speed of light, yet, from that very doubt, another door opened. Many decades later, in the 1980s, French physicist Alain Aspect and his team carried out experiments to test this idea. They emitted two photons from the same source of light and sent them hundreds of meters apart. Strangely, when one particle changed its state, the other particle also changed instantly, with no delay. This phenomenon is called quantum entanglement. In other words, two particles that seemed to be separated were in fact still bound together by an invisible connection. No matter how far apart they were, they continued to influence each other immediately, transcending the limits of space and time. Science describes this in the language of physics. Buddhism describes it in the language of awakened wisdom. But their essence is the same. Quantum physics shows that in the microscopic world, there is no absolute separation. Every particle is connected, every phenomenon is interdependent. Dependent origination shows that all things do not exist on their own, not independently, but arise and exist through countless causes and conditions. Both deny the existence of a separate, independent self. Imagine you and a close friend who studied together from childhood. After many years, even if later each of you lives in a different place, feelings and memories still connect the two of you. When the other is happy, you also feel happy. When that person is sad, you also feel sad. Quantum entanglement is like that, but on the level of matter. And dependent origination expands this to the whole universe. Nothing is completely separate, everything relies on and affects each other. In the past, classical science thought that the universe operated like a machine, in which each part was separate and followed its own rules. But quantum mechanics broke that image. Today, many leading physicists have to admit, the world is not a collection of independent particles, but a tightly interconnected network. The existence of any particle is tied to other particles. Even the consciousness of the observer also affects the result of the experiment. This reminds many people of the Buddhist teaching. All phenomena are created by the mind. Science is not religion, and Buddhism is not science. But it is strange that when both go on their own paths, they meet at one point. All things and phenomena are closely connected. Nothing exists independently. If science uses microscopes and mathematical formulas to discover, then the Buddha used meditation and insight. But in the end, the truth is still one: all phenomena arise due to conditions. When hearing about quantum entanglement, some people see it only as a strange phenomenon in the laboratory. But if understood deeply, we will see it reflected in daily life. When we smile at others, they will feel warm in their hearts, and that energy can spread to the whole community. When we are angry, that anger also does not stop with us, but affects relatives, colleagues, and even society. A small action can also create immeasurable consequences. Like a butterfly flapping its wings that can cause a storm on the other side of the earth, that is also dependent origination, the entanglement within human life itself. Thus, modern science, with all its tools and intellect, is gradually approaching what the Buddha realized thousands of years ago. This meeting is not to prove that Buddhism is right, but to show that truth goes beyond the boundaries of religion or science. That truth is simple: if dependent origination shows us binding and connection, then impermanence points out the ever-changing nature of all things. The Buddha taught, all conditioned phenomena are impermanent. At first it may sound like a sad reminder, but in fact, impermanence is the very breath of the universe, the stream that nourishes life. Look at a flower in the garden. In the morning, it blooms fully, radiant in color and fragrance. But only a few days later, the petals begin to wither and fall to the ground. If we only look on the surface, we may lament, the flower has died. But in truth, that petal is dissolving into the soil, becoming nourishment for the root, feeding new life. Impermanence does not destroy, it transforms. Thanks to impermanence, the old passes away, the new arises. If the flower does not wither, how can there be fruit? If the fruit does not fall, how can there be seeds for the next season? Impermanence is the creative flame of the universe. A child growing day by day, that is impermanence. A strand of hair turning gray, a wrinkle appearing, that is impermanence. The anger of yesterday, today has subsided. The pain that once seemed endless, after some years becomes a memory. If there were no impermanence, suffering would never end. But because of impermanence, we know that suffering will pass, like clouds parting to reveal the blue sky. Cosmologists have discovered that stars do not live forever. They are born from cosmic dust clouds, burn brightly for millions or billions of years, and then fade into black holes, neutron stars, or explode into supernovae. That fading releases heavy elements, iron, gold, carbon, into space. And those very elements form the earth and the human body. In other words, we are living thanks to the death of stars. Impermanence unfolds not only in flowers and leaves, but on a cosmic scale. Live fully in the present, because we know this moment will never return. Let go, because everything will change. Nothing can be held forever. Nourish hope, because every suffering will pass, like a long winter that surely gives way to spring. If we fear impermanence, we will see life as nothing but loss. But if we understand impermanence, we will see life as an endless river, always fresh, always new. Impermanence is not an enemy. It is a gentle teacher, reminding us that happiness does not lie in clinging, but in the ability to receive, to cherish, and to let go. When we understand the impermanent breath of the universe, we no longer complain when flowers fall, when hair turns gray, when loved ones depart. Instead, we know how to smile and say, this is the natural rhythm of life. If dependent origination shows that all things arise from many conditions, and impermanence shows that everything is constantly changing, then non-self is the crystallization of both. Within the body and mind we call I, there is in fact no fixed self. At first, this concept may confuse many. If there is no me, then who is living, who is thinking, who is suffering. But if we contemplate deeply, we will see that non-self does not deny existence, but breaks the illusion of an independent, eternal self. Imagine a car. It consists of wheels, an engine, seats, a steering wheel. If we dismantle all of them, the so-called car disappears, leaving only separate parts. So, does a car truly exist? Yes, but only as a concept based on the combination of parts. It has no independent entity. Human beings are the same. Our body is the combination of earth, water, wind, and fire. Our mind is the blending of emotions, memories, perceptions, and will. When taken apart, there is nothing that can be called a self. Scientists have studied the brain and discovered, the sense of self is only a product of neural activity. When the brain processes memory, we think that I am the one who experienced it. When the brain recognizes the body, we believe that I am this body. When the brain generates a continuous stream of thoughts, we mistake it as I am talking to myself. But in reality, all of this is just processes unfolding, with no controller inside. Just as a wave has no separate essence apart from the ocean, the self is only a phenomenon arising from countless conditions. Think of anger. When we are angry, we feel, I am very angry. But if we observe carefully, we will see, anger arises due to external factors, someone's words or actions. It is affected by the state of the body, being hungry, tired, stressed. It connects to past memories, unhealed wounds. When those conditions change, the anger also fades. So where is the angry self? It is only a stream of phenomena, not a true entity. Point 1. Less attachment. When we see that the I is not real, we no longer cling to protecting a fragile, vulnerable ego. Point 2. Greater compassion. When the self dissolves, the boundary between me and others fades, and we open our hearts more easily, with empathy and love. Point 3. Freedom from suffering. Much suffering arises from clinging to the self. I must succeed, I must not be inferior. When we realize non-self, we feel light and free. Non-self does not make us disappear, it helps us expand ourselves. When we are no longer limited by a small ego, we become the whole. We are the clouds, the wind, the sunlight, our loved ones, our friends, the entire earth and sky. When we break the illusion of the self, we see a simple yet liberating truth. Nothing belongs to me, yet I belong to all. If dependent origination shows us connection, impermanence reminds us of constant change, and non-self breaks the illusion of a separate I, then compassion is the flower that blossoms from that wisdom. Without wisdom, compassion can easily turn into pity or sentimentality. Without compassion, wisdom can become cold and rigid. In Buddhism, wisdom and compassion are like the two wings of a bird, allowing it to soar into the sky of liberation. What is compassion? Compassion is not merely pity. Compassion is to understand and to love. Only when we understand the suffering of others can we truly love them. Without understanding, what we call love is just imposing our own wishes onto others. Metta means offering happiness, karuna means relieving suffering. Together, they form a vast heart, wishing to help others be free from suffering and attain peace. Have you ever seen a child crying loudly in public? Strangers may feel annoyed or frustrated. But the mother is different, she understands that her child is hungry, tired, or afraid. Because she understands, she can embrace and comfort. Compassion in Buddhism is the same, not condescending pity, but a deep understanding of another's suffering. Once we understand, our heart naturally softens, expands, and love arises. Modern scientific studies have shown that when people practice metta meditation, loving-kindness meditation, the brain releases chemicals that increase feelings of well-being, reduce stress, and enhance empathy. In particular, the brain regions related to recognizing others' emotions become more active. This means compassion is not just an ethical idea, but also a biological capacity that can be trained. The power of compassion. 1. Healing suffering. When we respond with compassion, the other person feels understood and no longer alone. Point 2. Transforming hatred. To repay hatred with hatred only multiplies suffering. Only compassion can cut through that cycle. Point 3. Spreading happiness. Compassion is like a lamp. When we light another lamp, our own light is not lost, it only grows wider. When we understand that someone's anger comes from their own suffering, we feel less resentment. When we see that even an enemy seeks happiness just as we do, we open our hearts with tolerance. When we practice love without discrimination, we become truly free, no longer trapped in hatred. Ban ko muon min dike noi teep fan nai kung voi dien koi, vo thuong, vo nod min se dike sat nia, jutron tin and fat hawk. Trong don nai, if dependent origination shows us connection, impermanence reminds us of constant change, and non-self breaks the illusion of a separate I, then compassion is the flower that blossoms from that wisdom. Without wisdom, compassion can easily turn into pity or sentimentality. Without compassion, wisdom can become cold and rigid. In Buddhism, wisdom and compassion are like the two wings of a bird, allowing it to soar into the sky of liberation. What is compassion? Compassion is not merely pity. Compassion is to understand and to love. Only when we understand the suffering of others can we truly love them. Without understanding, what we call love is just imposing our own wishes onto others. Metta means offering happiness, karuna means relieving suffering. Together, they form a vast heart, wishing to help others be free from suffering and attain peace. Have you ever seen a child crying loudly in public? Strangers may feel annoyed or frustrated. But the mother is different. She understands that her child is hungry, tired, or afraid. Because she understands, she can embrace and comfort. Compassion in Buddhism is the same, not condescending pity, but a deep understanding of another's suffering. Once we understand, our heart naturally softens, expands, and love arises. Modern scientific studies have shown that when people practice metta meditation, loving-kindness meditation, the brain releases chemicals that increase feelings of well-being, reduce stress, and enhance empathy. In particular, the brain regions related to recognizing others' emotions become more active. This means compassion is not just an ethical idea, but also a biological capacity that can be trained. The power of compassion. 1. Healing suffering. When we respond with compassion, the other person feels understood and no longer alone. 2. Transforming hatred. To repay hatred with hatred only multiplies suffering. Only compassion can cut through that cycle. 3. Spreading happiness. Compassion is like a lamp. When we light another lamp, our own light is not lost, it only grows wider. When we understand that someone's anger comes from their own suffering, we feel less resentment. When we see that even an enemy seeks happiness just as we do, we open our hearts with tolerance. When we practice love without discrimination, we become truly free, no longer trapped in hatred. Compassion is not a gift we bestow, but the very essence of the awakened heart that it enables us to live in harmony with all beings, transforming the world from a realm of suffering into a land of understanding and love. If wisdom is the light that guides the way, then compassion is the warmth that keeps that flame alive. Together they intertwine, forming the path of liberation that the Buddha walked and left for humanity. When the Buddha was still Prince Siddhartha, he experienced two extreme ways of living, one of luxury and indulgence within the palace. One of harsh asceticism, mortifying the body in the deep forest. He realized that neither path led to enlightenment. From this insight, he opened the way of the middle path, a way beyond the two extremes, bringing true wisdom and liberation. What is the middle path? The middle path does not mean compromise or weakly standing in between. It is balance, mindfulness, and freedom from extremes, not drowning in sensual pleasures, for desire can never be fully satisfied, not torturing the body with extreme austerity, for exhaustion clouds the mind. The middle path is none other than the Noble Eightfold Path taught by the Buddha, a way of living in harmony, nurturing both body and mind. Working diligently is good, but overworking to the point of harming health becomes an extreme. Resting and relaxing are necessary, but indulging in laziness is also an extreme. Loving is beautiful, but when entangled in attachment and jealousy, love turns into a chain of bondage. The middle path teaches us to pause at the right time, to keep the rhythm of balance so that life becomes more complete. Insights from modern science. Modern psychologists also affirm, happiness does not lie in extremes but in balance. Too much stress brings illness, yet too little challenge leads to boredom. In biology, life is sustained by homeostasis, the balance of body systems. Temperature, heartbeat, blood sugar, are always regulated within a stable range. If they drift too far for too long, disease arises. this is strikingly close to the philosophy of the middle path. Life endures only when balance is maintained. The meaning of the middle path: 1. Calms the mind, free from being pulled by desire or weighed down by harsh austerity. 2. Brings health, caring for the body while nourishing the mind. 3. Opens the way to enlightenment, for only when the mind is balanced can truth be clearly seen. Imagine a lute that if its strings are too loose, the sound is dull. If too tight, they snap. Only when tuned just right can the lute produce harmonious music. The Buddha once taught his disciples with this very image. Life is the same: if too indulgent, we drown in desire; if too severe, we collapse in exhaustion. Only by keeping the strings of life in proper tension can we find peace. The middle path is not a weak compromise but the way of wisdom, letting go of extremes, keeping the mind in balance, living with awareness, walking the middle path. We neither chase illusions nor chain ourselves in hardship. We live fully in the present moment, free and steady, like one walking on a tightrope stretched across 2 cliffs, each step firm, light, and spacious. From ancient times, the greatest question of humanity has always been, where do we come from? Where will we go? All religions, philosophies, and sciences have sought answers. In Buddhism, the answer is illuminated through 2 principles: karma and rebirth, samsara. These are the keys that explain why humans are born, age, fall ill, and die, and why this cycle of suffering repeats endlessly. What is karma? Karma means intentional action, actions of body, speech, and mind that arise from conscious volition. Speaking a kind word, planting a wholesome seed, that is good karma; speaking a harmful word, committing a hurtful deed, that is unwholesome karma. Even thoughts create karma, for they leave imprints on the mind, shaping habits and tendencies. The Buddha taught, it is by karma that beings become noble or lowly, happy or miserable, wise or foolish. Karma is not an external punishment, but the natural law of cause and effect. Whatever seed is sown, that fruit will be reaped. Samsara, the cycle of birth and death. Samsara is the endless cycle of rebirth, turning ceaselessly without pause. When this body disintegrates, consciousness takes birth in another form. According to the karma accumulated, the Buddha described samsara as an infinite river. Water flows on without end, from one bend to another. The body is like waves rising and dissolving, while the stream itself, symbolizing consciousness and karma, continues without interruption. Within this cycle there are 6 realms, the 6 paths: 1. Heaven; 2. Human; 3. Asura, titans or demigods; 4. Animal; 5. Hungry ghost; 6. Hell. Each realm is conditioned by karmic forces. Humans may be reborn in any of these, depending on the causes and conditions created in this life and previous ones. Imagine a person who lives greedily, always deceiving others for personal gain. At first, they may succeed and become wealthy. But gradually, their mind is filled with restlessness, friends leave them, and illness arises in their body. This is karmic consequence in the present life. When they pass away, the unresolved energies of greed, hatred, and delusion will draw them into a corresponding realm. Just like a seed buried in the ground, it never disappears, it waits for the right conditions to sprout. Today, neuroscience has discovered that every habit and thought leaves traces in the brain. A person who often gets angry primes their nervous system to react more strongly the next time. Someone who regularly cultivates compassion strengthens the brain regions associated with love and empathy. This parallels the Buddhist teaching on karma. Every action leaves an imprint, shaping the future. What is remarkable is that many different cultures also speak of rebirth. The ancient Greeks believed that souls would be reborn after death. Certain Indian philosophers before the Buddha also taught the idea of reincarnation. Today, researchers investigate past life memories from children who recount strange details that match the lives of deceased people. Though science has not fully proven it, more and more evidence suggests that consciousness does not simply vanish when the body dissolves. If we pay attention, we will see that the journey to obtain the Buddhist scriptures in the journey to the West is also a metaphor for samsara. The Tang monk and his disciples keep moving forward, facing trials, and then continuing on. Each demon, each obstacle, is a karmic hindrance they must confront. Only by overcoming them can they move further along the path. It is just like human beings in the cycle of birth and death. We must constantly learn, face challenges, and transcend them in order to Reach the shore of enlightenment, the meaning of understanding karma and samsara 1. It helps us take responsibility for our own lives. No more blaming gods or fate. Every result comes from what we ourselves have created. Point 2. It opens the door of hope. Even if today we commit unwholesome deeds, we can still transform, sowing seeds of goodness for tomorrow. Point 3. It encourages mindfulness. Because every thought, word, and action matters, each leaves its mark on both present and future. Samsara is like a flame passed from one candle to another. The new flame is not exactly the old flame, yet it is not separate either. It continues the energy of the one before it. In the same way, this life connects to the next through karmic energy. There is no unchanging soul, but there is the continuity of cause and effect. Karma and samsara are not dogmas to instill fear, but fair mirrors of reality. Whatever seed one sows, that fruit one reaps. The cycle of rebirth may seem endless, but the Buddha pointed out the path to end it. Enlightenment, understanding karma and samsara, we live with more care, more compassion, and greater willingness to plant wholesome seeds. For the happiness of tomorrow begins with what we cultivate right now. During the nights beneath the Bodhi tree, the Buddha saw into the very roots of the cycle of birth and death. He perceived clearly a chain of 12 links, the 12 nidanas, like a vast machine running endlessly, dragging beings through the ocean of suffering. That if karma and samsara are the endless river, then the 12 nidanas are the detailed map of that river, showing us where the water comes from, which turns it takes, and why we are swept along without rest. 1. Ignorance, avidya, the darkness of delusion. The origin of all is ignorance, the failure to see the truth. Ignorance clouds wisdom, making us mistake the false for the real, clinging to this body as me, clinging to feelings as I. For example, when anger arises, we think, this anger is mine, I must vent it. But in reality, anger is only a passing mental phenomenon. Because of ignorance, we cling to it, and thus create endless consequences. 2. Saskara, formations, karmic impulses. From ignorance, beings begin to act wrongly. Greed, hatred, and harmful deeds create karma. These karmic actions accumulate, becoming habits, becoming the driving force for future existence. It is like a person lost in a dark forest. Unable to see the path, they recklessly wander. Each misguided step only leads them deeper into confusion. 3. Vijnana, consciousness. From formations arises consciousness, the stream of awareness that continues from one life to another. When a body disintegrates, this stream of consciousness carries karma to seek a new rebirth. A simple image, one candle goes out, yet its flame is passed to another. The new flame is not exactly the same, yet it is not separate either. 4. Namarupa, name and form, mind and body. When consciousness enters the womb, the combination gives rise to nama, mind, and rupa, form. This is the beginning of a new life. Nama is the mental aspect, thoughts, intentions, rupa is the physical body, the two depend on each other, inseparable. 5. Ayatana, the 6 sense bases. As the embryo develops, the 6 faculties are formed: eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. These are the doors through which we engage the world. If life were a house, the 6 senses are the windows. Through them, we see, hear, and feel. Yet it is also through them that we become bound. 6. Sparsa, contact. When the 6 faculties meet the 6 sense objects, form, sound, smell, taste, touch, and mental objects, contact arises. For example, the eye sees a flower, the ear hears music, the tongue tastes something delicious. Contact is like a spark when 2 wires meet, igniting the next link. 7. Vedana, feeling. From contact arises feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Seeing beauty brings delight, hearing criticism brings sorrow, encountering something ordinary brings indifference. Feelings are like ocean waves, constantly rising and falling, tossing the boat of consciousness. 8. Tia-with-makron, craving. From feeling arises craving. When we feel pleasure, we wish to cling to it, when we feel pain, we wish to escape it. Thus arises tia-with-makron, thirst, desire, attachment. Craving is like a flame that never goes out, the more it is fed, the more it burns. 9. Upadana, clinging. From craving comes clinging, grasping tightly to objects that we cling to: wealth, status, the body, loved ones, insisting, "This is mine." But all is impermanent. The tighter we hold, the deeper the suffering when loss comes. 10. Bhava, becoming, existence. Through clinging, becoming is established, existence within a certain state, the accumulation of karma that propels the next life. This is the momentum preparing future rebirth. 11. Jati, birth. From becoming arises birth, the beginning of a new existence. 12. Jaramara, aging and death. Once there is birth, aging, sickness, and death are inevitable. And from that death, the cycle turns back to ignorance, beginning a new round of the 12 nidanas. Once there is birth, aging, sickness, and death cannot be avoided. And from that death, the cycle returns to ignorance, beginning a new round of the 12 links of dependent origination. The meaning of the 12 links of dependent origination. 1. It makes clear that suffering does not come from the outside, but from the very chain of inner conditions. Point 2. It shows us there is no absolute beginning. There is no first cause, only a continuous chain of links operating together. Point 3. It opens the door to liberation. If one link is cut off, the cycle will stop. The Buddha taught, because of ignorance there are formations. If ignorance ceases, formations cease. Because formations cease, consciousness ceases, and so on, until aging and death also cease. Every time Master Tang and his disciples met a demon on their journey, that was a condition. If they lacked mindfulness, they would be trapped in suffering. But if they overcame it, they came closer to the western heaven. In the same way, if we cut off even one link of the 12, for example, stopping at craving, tie with makron, or clinging, upadana, the wheel of suffering will slow down. The 12 links are like a secret map that the Buddha left for humanity. They show us why suffering keeps repeating, and also point out the way to break free. By understanding conditions, we realize suffering is not an unchangeable destiny. With mindfulness, we can stop at any moment, and that is the path of liberation. When the Buddha attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, he not only saw the endless cycle of rebirth, but also the clear path beyond it. That path is called the Noble Eightfold Path, 8 practices that lead a person from delusion to wisdom, from suffering to peace, from samsara to nirvana. If the 12 links are the map of suffering, then the Eightfold Path is the bridge of light leading out of that map. The Noble Eightfold Path, 8 companions on the way. Right means correct, true, free from distortion. The 8 paths are not 8 steps in sequence, but 8 aspects practiced together, supporting each other. Point 1. Right view. Understanding correctly about cause and effect, impermanence, and non-self. This is the foundation. If our view is wrong, all actions that follow will be misguided. Example, if we believe wealth is permanent, we will cling greedily to it. But if we see impermanence clearly, we will use it for benefit, not become enslaved by it. Point 2. Right thought, intention, thinking in the right way, nurturing kindness, letting go of anger, avoiding harm to oneself or others. A small seed of thought today becomes the action of tomorrow. Point 3. Right speech, speaking truthfully, gently, and constructively, avoiding lies, slander, harsh words, or divisive speech. Words are like seeds planted in people's hearts. A single word of comfort can save an entire life. Point 4. Right action, acting in harmony, not killing, not stealing, not committing sexual misconduct, living with love and responsibility. The body is like a vehicle, karma is like its wheels, where it goes depends on how we steer it. Point 5. Right livelihood, earning a living righteously, without harming living beings, without trading weapons, drugs, or anything that causes delusion. Every bite of food, every coin earned is karmic energy we bring into life. Point 6. Right effort, diligence in the right direction, preventing unwholesome states from arising, abandoning those already arisen, cultivating wholesome states not yet arisen, and increasing those already present, like a gardener, pulling out weeds and tending the flowers and fruit. Point 7. Right mindfulness, living with awareness, knowing clearly each breath, each step, each emotion as it arises. Mindfulness is like a lamp in a dark room. Once lit, the darkness disappears. Point 8. Right concentration, training the mind in focus and stability, entering meditation. When the mind is like a still lake, wisdom shines clearly like the moon reflected on water. if we compare a human being to a carriage, right view is the map, right thought is the steering, right speech, right action, right livelihood are the wheels rolling on the path, right effort is the fuel, right mindfulness is the alert driver. Right concentration is the peaceful destination, none stands alone, all work together to carry the carriage beyond the desert of suffering. Many people think that practice is only for monks, but in truth, the Noble Eightfold Path is very close to daily life, when we hold back and refrain from speaking words that hurt our loved ones, that is right speech, when we choose a profession that does not harm the environment, that is right livelihood, when we take a deep breath and realize we are alive, that is right mindfulness. The Eightfold Path is not distant. It is present in every mindful moment, the journey of Master Tang and his companions. The pilgrimage of Master Tang and his disciples is a symbol of the Eightfold Path. Master Tang represents right view, always keeping a pure heart and unwavering goal. Sun Wukong represents right effort, the tireless strength that overcomes obstacles. Zhu Beiji, though lazy and greedy, reflects the faults within us that need transformation. Sha Wujing represents patience and perseverance. The entire group traveling together is like the 8 branches of the path, walking side by side, complementing one another. Modern confirmation today, neuroscientists have proven meditation helps the brain reduce stress and increase concentration, mindfulness lowers anxiety and improves health, positive speech, right speech, increases oxytocin, the bonding hormone. What the Buddha saw 2,600 years ago is now gradually being confirmed by science. Beyond ethics, the path of liberation. The Eightfold Path is not only social ethics, but the ultimate way to liberation. With right view, we dispel ignorance. With right mindfulness and right concentration, we are no longer dragged by craving. When all 8 branches work together, the 12 links of dependent origination naturally dissolve. That is when the wheel of samsara stops, and the mind reaches freedom. Called Nirvana, the Eightfold Path is like a bright road through a dark forest. If we follow it, there is no fear, because every step leads us into the light. That it is not the Buddha's path alone, but a path for all. Whoever walks it will see. Whoever perseveres will be liberated. If suffering is the vast ocean, and samsara its stormy waves, then Nirvana is the peaceful shore, where the boat of the mind can anchor after countless tempests. The Buddha used many ways to describe Nirvana, but he also emphasized, Nirvana is beyond thought and imagination, beyond words. Still, to guide beings toward it, he used metaphors, imagery, and familiar concepts. What is Nirvana? In Sanskrit, nirva means blowing out, like a flame being extinguished. But this is not loss or annihilation, it is the extinguishing of greed, hatred, and delusion, the fires that burn the heart. Nirvana is not a place, nor a distant heaven, but a state of liberated mind, no longer bound by karma. No longer pulled by craving. No longer covered by ignorance. When the mind is free, serene in the face of all change, that is Nirvana. Imagine a person tormented by thirst, running everywhere in search of water. No matter how much they drink, they never feel satisfied. The more they drink, the thirstier they become. This is the image of human beings caught in craving. When that person realizes the thirst is an illusion, and knows to stop, in that very moment, suffering ends. The thirst is gone, that is Nirvana. Nirvana is not nothingness. Many people mistake Nirvana for destruction, emptiness, or non-existence. But the Buddha affirmed, Nirvana is not the death of the soul. It is absolute freedom, beyond all concepts of being and non-being, gain and loss. I and the Sayutta Nikaya, Connected Discourses, the Buddha said, there is a realm where there is no earth, no water, no fire, no wind. And no boundless space, no boundless consciousness, no nothingness, no neither perception nor non-perception. There is neither this world, nor another world, neither sun nor moon. Monks, this I call Nirvana. This teaching shows that Nirvana lies beyond all limits that language can capture. Do not think that Nirvana can only be attained after death. The Buddha once taught, when the mind lets go of a single desire, in that very moment it tastes liberation. When you forgive someone who has hurt you, in that moment you have touched Nirvana. When you sit quietly, breathing mindfully, not clinging to past or future, that too is Nirvana. Nirvana is not far away, it appears in every mindful moment of daily life. The pilgrimage as a symbol. The journey for the scriptures is a symbolic image of the path to Nirvana. Master Tang and his disciples endured 81 ordeals, representing the inner training of the mind. Each time they overcame a demon, it symbolized the cutting off of one defilement, reaching the West and obtaining the true scriptures, that is touching the shore of liberation. Nirvana is not the final destination of a long journey, but awakening in every step along the way. Scientific glimpses today. Neuroscientists studying the brains of deep meditators have discovered, the brain regions linked to the self become less active. The brain produces a natural state of well-being, independent of external stimuli. Though science cannot yet call this nirvana, such findings show that the human mind can reach a level of freedom and happiness beyond material conditions. The lotus in the world. Nirvana is the ultimate goal of Buddhism, but not to escape from life, rather to live more fully. One who attains nirvana still walks, eats, laughs, and lives, yet is no longer bound. Like a lotus growing in the mud yet unstained, the enlightened one lives in the world while keeping a pure heart. Nirvana is not a distant place, but freedom in the present moment. When we see clearly impermanence and non-self, when we release craving, hatred, and delusion, nirvana is right before our eyes. This is the state the Buddha called the supreme bliss, unmoved by birth and death. The Buddha's message after his enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. The Buddha did not keep the truth for himself. For 45 years, he walked the land, teaching everyone, kings and beggars, scholars and villagers. His message was simple yet profound. One is all is one. Nothing exists in isolation. To see dependent origination is to see the Dharma. To see the Dharma is to see the Tathagata. Human beings, lost in ignorance, create karma and suffer. But ignorance is not destiny. Like darkness, it disappears the moment a lamp is lit. That lamp is right view, the correct understanding of dependent origination. When we see that all things arise in dependence on each other, we no longer cling to self, no longer chase greed, hatred, or delusion. The Buddha clearly pointed out the path to liberation from the cycle of rebirth, the Noble Eightfold Path, right view, seeing the true nature of dependent origination, right intention, thoughts that are clear, free from greed and anger, right speech, truthful words, words of kindness, right action, wholesome and compassionate deeds, right livelihood, an occupation that causes no harm, right effort, perseverance in the right direction. Right mindfulness, awareness in every moment, right concentration, a mind that is calm and luminous. This is not a dogma, but a map of practice. Anyone who follows it will feel transformation within body and mind. When ignorance ceases, formation cease. When craving and clinging cease, becoming ends, the wheel of birth and death stops. That is nirvana, the state free from craving, fear, and suffering. Nirvana is not a faraway realm, but stillness and freedom in the here and now. One who sees dependent origination, who lives in mindfulness, can already taste liberation in the midst of everyday life. Today, people have countless modern tools, yet they are more bound than ever, addicted to social media, chasing wealth and fame, anxious about the future, clinging to the past. These are nothing but craving and clinging in the web of conditions. To be free does not mean leaving the world, but living mindfully in every interaction. When holding your phone, know you are holding it. When hearing criticism, notice the emotion arise and dissolve. When standing before success or failure, remain peaceful within. The Buddha's journey is also our journey. Anyone can move from ignorance to wisdom, from suffering to liberation, like the lotus rising from the mud to bloom in purity. Each of us has the capacity to transform ourselves. To see dependent origination is to live with great compassion and radiant wisdom. Then suffering fades like passing clouds, and the path of freedom opens right beneath our steps. Dear friend, life is like a river, flowing ceaselessly. At times we are joyful, at times in pain. Sometimes it feels as if we have lost everything, other times as if we have gained it all. But the Buddha reminded us of a simple truth: everything arises depending on conditions, and everything will fade away when conditions end. If we truly understand this, we will cling less, suffer less. We will cherish every breath, every smile, every moment of the present. A sincere hug, a kind word, a small act of goodness, all can become the causes and conditions that nourish happiness, for ourselves and for others. Remember this: liberation is not far away. It lies in how we live each day. When you smile at a loved one, when you let go of resentment, when you listen deeply with your whole heart, you are already touching nirvana in this very life, and one day, you will realize. Suffering is but a passing rain. Inner peace is the eternal sky. May you, after hearing this story, find renewed faith to walk the path of mindfulness with steadiness and ease.